Petworking is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and here with a very exciting topic today. Again, delving into cats, continuing our Year of the Cat here in 2025. Really excited to discuss a new partnership between some leading players in the pet care and animal health field, Hope Pet Nutrition, Darwin's ARC, the Broad Institute, and UMass Medical School. They have recently launched a new initiative called Darwin's Cat. It is the first feline genomic study using fur as a collection mechanism, and it has 12,000 cats enrolled. So we're going to talk today about the potential implications for pet owners that could arise from this research, the long-term health implications that could arise for cats. I'm really pleased to have with me today Dr. Jennifer Radosevich, the Senior Vice President of Research and Innovation at Hill, along with Dr. Elinor Karlsson, who is the Director of the Vertebrate Genomics Group at the Broad Institute and also a professor at the UMass Medical School. So psyched to have them here today. We're going to talk a little bit about how this partnership came to be, what the overarching goals for the partnership are, and how this, is going to play out in the goal that I think we all are striving towards with our pets, whether it be a dog or a cat, how we can spend more time with them and more quality time with them. It's super exciting to see this moving forward. And as I've said, I think the next few years are going to be just such a phenomenal, groundbreaking time of, advancements in pet longevity and improved pet health. But without further ado, I would love to welcome Dr. Karlsson and Dr. Radosevich to the show. Elinor, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Petworking.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're excited to be here.
It's super exciting. So we have Darwin's Cat. So I guess, the first place to start is, how, obviously we've had ongoing pet genomics research for a long time. I think everybody knows about Wisdom Panel, about Embark, but those are largely canine-focused genomic studies. We really haven't delved too much into the genomics of cats as of yet. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, one of the big problems there is getting genetic material to sequence from a cat, because they're not the most cooperative animals when it comes to swabbing or getting saliva. We can brush our dog's teeth. I don't think many people are able to brush their cats. And so this is the first study that is collecting and sequencing genetic material using fur, which makes it easier for cat owners to provide genetic sample. And you've got 12,000 cats enrolled already. Is that correct?
I think we're actually getting very close to 15,000. I just checked our website, so it's very exciting. No, I think you're right. Well, I think the biggest issue was probably just having the resources available to do the work. But I think the point you bring up is a really important one. It's been a focus of the whole project, which is that in a lot of ways, there's some research been done in cats, but the veterinary industry tends to focus, as far as pets go, primarily on dogs. And then they just, in a lot of cases, sort of do the same things in cats as they do in dogs. And talking to cat, veterinarians, especially veterinarians who focus on cats, they have a lot of concerns over that approach, because a lot of cats just never get any care because people don't want to bring them to the vet because it's so stressful for them. And so in setting up a project that was really focused around doing cat science better, one of our sort of priorities in our heads was like, how do we actually design a project that's for cats and acknowledges that cats are cats, and things that we can do in dogs we're not going to be able to do as easily in cats. And one of those things was, how do you get a DNA sample from a cat? I mean, yes, you could pin them down, shove a swab into their mouth, try to get a DNA sample that way. And it's not that you can't do that, but we sort of stepped back and said, is there actually a better way to do this than that kind of approach?
I can imagine most cats are appreciative of the thoughts that went into that, because I can't imagine too many of them want to be pinned down. And we know the traumas, and the stories associated with trying to get cats into their carriers and take them to the vet. We did an episode earlier this year with Dr. Lisa Racine from Hills and about the World of the Cat report. And it's true. I think the studies out there are 60% of cats have never even been to the vet. And yes, I think it is kind of and Dr. Racine and I discussed this, it is sort of a failing of the way the veterinary education system has evolved, is that it's small animal, and a lot of the innovation, both in nutrition and in veterinary care, has tended to take learnings applied from small dogs and try to translate them to cats. And that's
Yep.
two different species. It doesn't work. And so I think what we're seeing a lot of, this year with the World of the Cat is cat focused and cat centered innovation, and really, catering to cat parents. And I know some cat parents don't like that term, but we're going to use it anyway. I don't think it's too derogatory, and I think it's fairly accurate. But the thing is that, if you don't have that focused cat-centric innovation, that cat-centric research, you're missing, there's huge gaps. And Jennifer, I'd love to get your perspective. When we're looking at, I've had a lot of conversations with Hills about, your research and innovation center. You have vet tracks in at the facility. You have, 1,000 dogs and cats doing nutrition testing. But, I would see you nodding. I would guess that even you would acknowledge that, the way the industry has prioritized research and innovation and development, it has been dog focused, and then it sort of is replicated for cats. What do you see coming out of this study that, is going to lead to future product innovation, research innovation at Hills, and how do you see this, taking this data and being able to manifest it out in the world for our cats and cat parents?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. In the past, we've just exactly applied what we've learned with dogs and the approaches with dogs to cats. And cats are not small dogs. Cats are cats. And so to be able to innovate and think, okay, some of the things that the approaches that we've taken for dogs, like understanding dog genetics, understanding dog biology, both in health and in disease, we can do for cats. It's just the approach we need to be different, right? Because what we're going to find, we suspect, in cats is going to be very different than dogs. The cat genetics is different than dogs. The way that dogs and cats have been bred is totally different. And so, many of the behaviors, many of the biology, the underlying biology is going to be different. And so, we know so much more about dogs because, yeah, we can stick a swab in their mouth and that's easy for us. But this innovation of being able to essentially take a little comb and brush your cat and get a few cat hairs and being able to get DNA from cat, it's much more amenable to the cat. It's more amenable to us taking the DNA sample, and it's just more humane, if you will, to be able to do that. And then once we get these DNA samples and we can compare, again, the genetics of cats that we know are healthy and cats that we know have certain disease conditions, once we find those differences, then that's where the magic happens. We're able to figure out different nutritional interventions for the diseases. We'll be able to figure out different pharmaceutical interventions. We may even be able to, and again, this is future, but we may even be able to predict risk of certain diseases based on genetics, and that will help veterinarians then be able to provide treatment plans or, health plans to make sure that the health span of the cat is as long as it's possible. So it's really exciting for us, and in some respects, it's a whole new world because we know we're going to find different things with the cats using some of these similar approaches, but customized for cats.
It sort of seems like we're playing catch up, sort of speak, right? You mentioned, being able to identify particular genetic vulnerabilities for diseases and things like that. That's something we've seen with, Wisdom Panel and Embark in dogs for probably upwards of 10 years now. You can predict, okay, well, you have this mixed breed dog, and it has 25% lab. It's going to be more predisposed to cancers, or it's going to be more predisposed, to this underlying health condition that it is associated and affiliated with this genetic pattern. We've seen breed-specific nutrition innovation plays, coming out where people tailor diets and formulas to golden retrievers or labs or German shepherds based on the genetic research that has been done. Not being a cat dad, I will say that my knowledge of cat breeds is not as refined as my knowledge of dog breeds, but I mean, still, it seems like understanding that what conditions might befall a Bengal versus a Maine Coon should be something that cat owners know. And if you could get for the mixed breed cats that are out there, identifying those vulnerabilities that are associated with specific breeds, and then being able to highlight potential vulnerabilities to pet owners who have mixed breed cats, seems like there's a big opportunity there. Would you agree?
So I think it's actually a really interesting question. There's a huge opportunity here, and it's going to be really challenging initially in cats because we aren't actually entirely sure from a genetic standpoint even what a cat breed is. We know there are some cat breeds that have very well-defined histories and origin stories. We know there are some cat breeds like Siamese, where there's probably a lot of people that call their cat Siamese because it looks a certain way. And so whether that's actually a genetic definition or just sort of what we call a phenotypic definition, one based on what the cat looks like, is something that we'll be able to figure out as we start looking through the genetics. But I think your question sort of brings up some bigger questions as well, in that even on the dog side, the research has been really constrained by a limitation on the research side of actually finding the causes of the disease, not just your dog is some percent of some breed, but what is it that's actually putting them at a higher risk of cancer? And that kind of research for complex diseases like cancer, diseases that are controlled by changes in many different genes, requires really, really big sample sizes. It's a really big challenge. And one of the exciting things as a scientist for me with the cat project that we're doing with Hills is that the way it's been set up, we're going to have the resources to build the infrastructure we need to build to actually scale it up to a really, really large size and have the statistical power we need to start actually asking questions about the causes of diseases. This is going to be a little ways off. Cats genetics is going to be really complicated, but I think often projects are sort of designed to be small, and this is a project that has been designed to be big, which is really exciting.
Yeah, to build on that, this is totally different than some of the more traditional research approaches, in particular that pet nutrition companies and Hills has taken. Many times we have a hypothesis as far as a nutritional intervention or some type of intervention for a particular condition, and we'll say, okay, let's get 40 cats with this condition, and let's get 40 cats without this condition, and then we feed them the nutrition, we give them the intervention, and we see what the results are. And many times we can get some statistically significant results and show benefit, but that's just very one particular disease, one particular intervention, one particular, and we don't get a broader perspective on this. And so what I'm really excited about this this initiative with UMass and Broad is the community science aspect of it, where we could do large scale population genetics and understand a wide variety and diverse array of conditions all at the same time. Because if we have a large sample size, we can get a significantly larger amount of data than traditional studies. So this is, instead of a traditional study, I'm really kind of considering this as a transformational study in scientific research. So, and we get information from cats, quote, in the wild. Pet parents are interacting with their cats daily and having fun, and they want to know more about their cats. And so we're really calling upon the pet parents to help us with this, because the more cats, the more information we have, the better the study will be.
I know, in the past, there's been partnerships with Mars and leveraging their genetics data, and on the back end, as you get more and more data sets in at Broad, how does that translate out? When you talk about like the large scale, each time you get a partnership like this and you're able to get more data into, the Broad bank, so to speak, what are the broader implications for genetics-based research?
So I think there's two really exciting things about this project. The first is that the way that Darwin's Ark does their genetic data collection from both the dogs and the cats is that rather than using technology that sort of looks at a predetermined set of positions in the genome, we just look at the entire thing. It's an approach that's designed for discovery, because we don't know which part of the genome is going to be important yet. And so we take a very broad approach of just trying to get as much information as possible on every single animal. And the same thing on the survey side. We ask people lots of questions about lots of different things, because we're not even entirely clear exactly which traits are the most shaped by genetics and which ones are the most shaped by environment. But the other thing that I'm excited about is that the projects that Darwin's Ark does are open data projects, meaning that we will share all of the information we collect with other scientists. And it's so exciting to work with a partner like Hills that was on board with this approach, because we're basically at the very beginning of the sort of research pipeline, right? Like, we need to discover things so that companies like Hills can then follow up with them and actually develop interventions and things that will actually benefit the cats. But if you don't have that initial big research going on where people are figuring out what's going on a molecular level with these diseases, you can't get to that point. And similarly, if the only people you have looking at the data are the people in my team, there's only so many questions that we can actually ask. And so by making it an open data project, we can build the resource, reach out to all the other scientists out there. And if you know any scientists that like data, you'll know what I mean, is that, like, once you can say, there is data here, people will come and work with it, because that's really exciting to them. And it'll be, when we get to that point, it's going to be really interesting to see. People will start asking questions that never even occurred to me, and start finding things in this data that I didn't even think was a thing we could find. And that as a scientist is one of the best moments for me.
Yeah, and to build upon that, we're really excited to be at the ground level on this, but fully expect that the larger scientific community, both from the pet food industry and the pharmaceutical industries, utilize this data to learn, because there's way too many questions and way too many angles that this data can be queried and understand. We have a history of this. So, for example, again, it's several years ago, but we donated all our cat sequences for the cat genome for the first genome chip for the Morris Animal Foundation to be able to be utilized on an open platform for scientists. So, we found some really great things associated with that. Other scientists in the public realm also found it. We saw that success, and we want to continue that success and amplify it through this project.
Yeah. I mean, it does speak to, the benefits of, open data and community sharing, in the common goal of achieving better health outcomes for our pets, right? Um, you know, I'd be interested though, from a Hill specific standpoint, Jennifer. We talked a little bit, about the nutrition center and, some of the other, groundbreaking research that you have done at Hills in the past. Um, I personally think, when we think about AI, that there's a complete game changer in terms of being able to analyze and reinterpret large open source data, potentially like this. Um, but then I also see, that there's so much other data out there that could be cross-linked to genetic data. So, looking at wearables and whether that's in-house, like the vet tracks monitors that Hills uses at the nutrition center, or whether that's something like the Inboxia collar that I have Peony wearing. I don't know that there's been too much in the way of wearables for cats yet. I
Yeah.
think, we're starting to scratch the tip of the iceberg there. But when
Yep.
we see, activity data, we did an episode with Bistro Cat earlier this year, and
Yep.
products Cecilia's developed, can tell you how frequently the cat is eating and how whether it the palatability of the food based on the time that it takes the cat to eat. And we see metrics like this that then could be cross-linked with DNA and health state research. What do you see, and then we have AI there as the facilitator to potentially, accelerate the identification of linkages in the data.
Yep.
What are some of the things there that you're most excited about? What do you see as the potential there?
Yeah, I really, again, the Pet Nutrition Center and the resources, and just the depth of science that we're doing to understand pets, their behavior, their phenotypic, expressions, and then how that all interacts with the nutrition that they have. We have that available. And we're really excited. We have a computational sciences group that does machine learning and looks at data in many different ways. And, once we have this genetic data, we'll be able to pull that in. But I think it's really important, and you made a great point that, genetic data on its own is actually kind of meaningless, right? They're DNA sequences. If you don't pair that with behavior data, if you don't pair that with other phenotypic data and traits and diseases and other things, then you can't really delve into what's going on. You absolutely have to make these different connections as to behavior. And I'd like to take a little bit of time and make a couple points on cat behavior and wearables. We have utilized wearables for several years now in dogs to understand different dog behavior with a triaxial accelerometer. Understanding we have algorithms for scratching, for head shaking, for sleep quality, and we've been able to demonstrate benefits of certain interventions. In fact, in dermatitis atopic dogs, we were able to objectively show a reduction in itching and scratching with our food, right? And so wouldn't it be great if we could do with that with cats? Well, surprise, surprise, cats are not small dogs. And the types of behaviors that we need to be able to validate and measure are totally different, right? So for example, for mobility, in a cat, you would look for jumping behaviors, right? That's not an algorithm that we really have for dogs, because for mobility for dogs, it's more, running and the like. So, but the ability of a cat to jump several feet and the like, that's one of the first things that you look for with reduced mobility and a potential intervention. And so I'm really pleased to share, we don't share a ton publicly ahead of time, but we do have wearable devices on cats at our pet nutrition center. We are in the process of collecting data and developing those cat specific behaviors. And I'm really excited that once we get some of this other phenotypic and genetic data to, really marrying them to be able to look and see what the correlations are to the cat specific behaviors with some of this other phenotypic data and understanding, again, how we can really optimize the longevity and the health span of cats so that they can enjoy the long relationship with their pet parents.
This data coming out. If you see, the wearables and, I'm assuming, in this spirit of data sharing and collaboration and this partnership that, you'll be seeing some of the phenotypic behavior activity data from Hills. What are you most excited about in terms of cross-linking and where do you see the greatest potential for advancement in mapping, genomic data with the other data sets that are being collected?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about our community science approach at Darwin's Ark is that not only is there an opportunity to sequence your pet, but we also ask you a lot of questions about your pet, like a lot of survey questions. And, if you were going to ask me about the 3 cats that I have at home, I would tell you that I have a skinny cat, a medium-sized cat, and a chubby cat. Chubby cat, super into food. And I have this giant cat wheel, and weirdly, the skinny cat is on the cat wheel way more than the chubby cat. So it's like there's this behavioral component, there's this like response to food component, but 2 of the cats are full siblings of each other. So it seems like there's probably some genetics going on here and why they're so different as well, because they grew up in exactly the same environment. And I think that's where, when you have traits that are really complex, you can actually sort of use the really large data set at Darwin's Ark, where we can just ask people, how much does your cat move around? How high does your cat jump? It's one of those things that companies like 23andMe figured out in human genetics many years ago, is the power of surveys for powering genetics. Because even if the questions are not as precise as like going and measuring something with a measuring tape or something, there's information in them. And if you can get a big enough data set, that information is really powerful. And what we can do then is come up with hypotheses. We can come up with hypotheses about whether cats that carry particular genetic profiles are more likely to be active or more likely to be food motivated, whatever it is, more likely to get a disease. And then places like Hills can use that to inform the design of studies where they're getting really detailed information about the animals, because that kind of very labor-intensive study is hard to do at a large scale. But maybe they can actually design the study in such a way that they can select cats based on what their genetics are or something like that would allow them to more precisely answer the question that they're actually interested in answering.
Classify it, even if it is self-reported data. Getting that you're structuring the survey in a way that you're minimizing sample bias, respondent bias, so that you can identify sort of a large scale trend. And then that can be further validated with more precise scientific studies in the lab using wearables in a more controlled environment. So you're sort of taking the large scale sample, identifying the more macro trends based on the survey data. And then it becomes the responsibility of Hills or animal therapeutics companies or things like that to kind of drill down deeper into that data and scientifically validate it through more precisely structured clinical trials and things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think of it in my head as sort of like, how everybody always says correlation is not causation. The really large genetic studies are really good at getting the correlation, and there's no other way to do it. There's no other way to say this particular change in the DNA is correlated with having this disease or having this behavior. But it doesn't do causation. It doesn't tell you that this is the change you need to make in order to keep them from getting that disease. And so that's the sort of other side to the coin, where you need to do those really detailed studies to go from that correlation to the causation. And causation is what you need to be able to design an intervention.
Elinor, I think you make a good point too when you're talking about, when you're talking about a specific gene causing something else, that's absolutely right. You can't. But the other piece is many of these diseases and conditions are not due to just one gene. They're what's called polygenic, right? So they're due to the culmination of changes in several genes. And those are much more difficult to find, particularly in a very small population. However, again, the larger population that you get, right, the better chance that you're going to find, these correlations of several genes and several diseases. And then Elinor, to your point, when we're looking for pets to be able to show either nutritional or pharmaceutical interventions, those benefits, we can choose pets based on those that we hypothesize, okay, this might be some of the causes. We can choose those and show benefits in pets that have those particular risks for polygenic risks. So again, that's what's so exciting about this approach is a much larger approach to be able to delve much more deeper into this data.
No, that's really cool. It seems like at this point, although from the time we started talking about recording this episode to now, Elinor, it sounds like you've gone from 12,000 enrolled cats to 15,000 enrolled cats. But I would venture to say that there is always the desire to increase that sample size to, get that large scale correlation. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how do people sign up? How do they get involved in the study? And what are the immediate benefits that cat owners can derive from participating?
This is one of the I guess, challenging and interesting communications challenges with this project. So, as far as how you sign up and everything, you go to our website, darwinsark.org, you sign your cat up, and you'll immediately get access to all of the survey questions we have. And it's a very new site, so people are going to have to be patient with us, but eventually we're going to give you feedback on those survey questions based on how your cat compares to other cats and their personality and their food motivation and things like that. We're working very hard in the background to analyze the data to get that on there. If you choose to do genetics on your cat, then you can order a DNA kit. That costs $150 now, and that's an at-cost thing. So the genetics is quite expensive, and so we can't scale up to the sample sizes we need and actually fund the sequencing per cat. And so we've been working with the people that are doing the sequencing and everything to get the cost down as low as possible. And so we're basically offering the ability to donate the cost of doing that sequencing so you can get your cat sequenced. Right now, if you do that, we're just getting the first sort of like 500 to 1,000 cats sequenced. And once we have that data in-house, we're going to need to do some work analyzing it in order to give people feedback. So you won't get any information on your cat's genetics immediately. And that's just because, with dogs, there was enough data out there already that we could do some things like tell you what breeds were in your mixed breed dog. Like that was already research that had been done by the community and something we could offer people immediately. We don't have that base of research to build on with cat science right now. There's been some beautiful studies looking at various breeds and breed genetics and risk factors and things, but they've been limited in size. And so we're going to need to figure out how to analyze this really complicated data from pet cats. This is a very long way of saying you might have to wait a little bit, but we're really trying to do it as quickly as possible to get to the point where when we figure out something about your cat's genetics, we will be giving you that information back. And so that's from our standpoint, from a purely sort of like practical standpoint, the most powerful sort of study to have for this kind of thing would be one where people feel like they have a relationship with us. They keep coming back. They tell us when their pet develops a disease. They tell us when something changes in their life. What in science we call a longitudinal study. So it's not just a single time point, but we actually find out about that animal across the whole course of their life. And so from our standpoint, both because we like giving information back to people, but also as a way to keep people engaged, we're going to try to make sure that we're giving information back to our participants when we're, as soon as we're able to do that. And it's worth noting that, just because I don't want to discourage anybody, you should definitely sign up now if you're interested in signing up, because when we figure things out, we'll be doing it for every single cat that's ever been signed up. It's not like you're going to get different results if you sign up later versus now, because we'll go back and reanalyze the genetics from any cat that's in our database and update their results as we sort of figure things out as we go along.
Yeah. No, I think we saw that, with Wisdom Panel. I did a Wisdom Panel test on Peony when I got her, and as the science continued to evolve, they were able to give new insights, about her breed, or, dogs that she might be related to, or things like that. I understand the challenges, but, eventually, hopefully, you're going to get things like, markers that might tell you whether your cat is predisposed to diabetes, or whether it's predisposed to kidney disease, or, understanding what breed your cat is. And that can be fun for people who, adopt a cat and it's mixed breed and they don't know what it is, or, and I think if we get, further along with that research, there's going to be an understanding of, phenotypic characteristics that certain breeds display. And hopefully that helps you provide a better environment for your cat. I know, knowing that Peony has Shepherd in her, and she has an 8th Shepherd, she has an 8th Chow Chow. She's a quarter lab. She looks like a lab, but it's interesting. It was interesting learning and understanding, like, oh, the Chow Chow might be why she's more protective of me, and giving people that insight for their. I think it's really cool, and hopefully, Jennifer, I know you guys at Hills had a partnership with Embark where there was a recommendation for not personalized, but a customized diet, a Hills diet recommendation based on the results of that Embark test. Are there anything that you envision from the Hills side, Jennifer, for cat parents that sign up now, where they might be getting Hills diet recommendations, or other updates? I don't know if you guys intend on marketing a cat wearable in the future or not, but an opportunity to participate in an at-home cat wearable study or something like that.
So absolutely, that's the goal. That's the goal, to be able to provide, much more customized recommendations for pet nutrition, and just recommendations for pet health, on a larger scale. We, with the dog pilot, and being able to recommend an appropriate life stage food is very appropriate, is important, right? Because some pet parents don't know that, when you're a large breed dog, 5 years old, that's your, middle age, and you need to be able to go on a life stage food that is much more senior, right? So same thing with cats. We are still understanding the nutritional needs of cats with respect to life stage. And so that would be our initial goal, is to, again, understand with respect to the genetics, the phenotypics, all this data set, and putting all this data together, how can we better customize the nutrition based on life stage, based on a particular disease condition, right? And that, those data sources could envelop the wearables, could envelop, certain biomarkers, certain metabolites, and that sort of thing. We're not there yet, right? And in fact, again, we're farther ahead in dog, but we're still on the cusp with dog to be able to do that. So the sooner that we can get more data through this partnership with UMass and the Broad Institute, the sooner we'll be able to catch up to that information in dogs and pull all these data sets together for the benefit of pet health, whether it be for nutrition or pharmaceuticals, or just, wellness, and to be able to help veterinarians be able to, provide the best guidance for the pet for its health span.
I mean, and there's so many potential applications. I mean, I'm personally very excited. We're seeing the fruition of genomic research in dogs, lead to the first FDA approved aging, anti-aging formula with Loyal coming out later this year. They have one that targets metabolism. They have another that targets the manifestation of growth, excess production of growth factor in large dogs that's going to be coming out. And, that is very much the product of genetic research. And it's leading to the first FDA approved anti-aging therapeutic in any species ever. And again, it kind of speaks to the fact that we're further ahead in dogs than we are in cat. But I think that's why this is so important, is getting that map of cat-specific genomic data. So hopefully we can have a therapeutic that extends the lifespan of cats. That we could understand whether NAD supplements would be effective in cats. Theoretically, it should be, but I know we've had leap years on a couple times. They've talked about wanting to do a cat specific NAD boost in the future, but right now it's just for dogs. And again, it speaks to that idea that we are playing, this is the year of the cat, not so much because cats are, suddenly and magically at the forefront. I think we're recognizing that we need to catch up. We need to catch up in terms of how we innovate for cats. We need to catch up in terms of the data that we have collected for cats. I think to some extent we are seeing cats become more popular because they are smaller, they're less expensive to care for, they're less expensive to feed. You can travel with them on a plane ostensibly, although, I don't know how that's any different than taking them to the vet in a carrier. So maybe that's not a driving force, but you can leave them at home and they'll eat and, take care of themselves for days at a time, where you can't do that with a dog. So I think, there's a lot of things that are driving the popularity of cats in this country. I know when we did the State of Shelter Pet Adoption report last summer with Dr. Karen Chenoy, the only growth in adoptions that we were seeing was in small dogs and cats. Large dog length of stay in shelters was down. But, historically, we have focused innovation and research on dog and then transferred it to cat, and now we're playing catch up. And so I encourage people, cat owners out there, homedark.org. You may not get those, actionable results immediately, but what you're doing is creating this database that science is going to be able to build off in the future and continue this year of the cat, not just in 2025, but in 2026 and beyond. Being said, I don't know, Elinor, if Jennifer, if there's any parting thoughts that you all have for folks, but that's my call to the cat owners out there. Is I know my brother has a cat. He loves it dearly. I'll be encouraging him to sign up, but any parting words of encouragement or recommendations for the cat owners out there and how they can get involved and what they can do in the meantime while we're waiting for this swath of innovation to manifest and materialize.
I feel like you did such a great job of summarizing there at the end that I don't really have anything to add to that. But yes, I think exactly what you said. We're doing this because there's not enough science been done in cats. And so we need to do that science and we need to do it really well. And that will take us time, but we're really excited to have people who have cats with us sort of on that process. We're going to be figuring things out as we go, and you're going to get to be part of the process if you sign up with us, and we're going to keep you updated on how it goes. And much like with your dogs, breed results and, health results, where you get updates sometimes that change the information you have, that's how science works. As we figure things out, it gets better. And it's exciting to be involved in a project where we actually have a plan to make things better.
And from my perspective, just want to thank you, Peter, for having us and having this opportunity to be able to showcase this great partnership, this great initiative, and to be able to, call upon cat owners to, participate. The more cat owners we have that participate, the sooner the better the sooner we'll be able to provide information, and we'll be able to utilize that information for the benefit of cats. So again, thank you, Peter, for having us.
My pleasure. It's been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a lot. I always love doing these things because it's just an ever expanding fountain of knowledge, and it's always a pleasure to have a chance to talk to such distinguished scientific minds such as you and Dr. Karlsson. I would reiterate to people out there that participating in the survey does not necessarily mean that you have to sign up for the genetic testing component. So if spending $150 on the genetics is something that you're not prepared to do right now, you can still participate in the survey and do the genetic testing component down the road. That's still helpful. But I would say it's a lot of fun. I can say knowing Teeny's genetics, I did it right away because it was like, it's a black box. I don't know what happened to her for the first 2 or 3 years of her life. I don't even know exactly how old she is. I know I was told she was between 2 and 3 when we adopted her, and I've had her for almost 8.5 years now. But knowing those genetics, particularly if you've adopted a cat, it can provide a window into their past for you. And as this foundational database gets formed, you're going to be among the first to know and have those insights about your breed, about your cat. And I think that's well worth the $150 to spend. But I will say, even just participating in the survey is helpful, and it's going to advance the science and lead to more and better developments in feline nutrition, therapeutics, veterinary care. If you don't have data, you can't advance the science of care and well-being for your pets. So I would encourage everybody to sign up. Being said, this has been a pleasure today, Dr. Karlsson, Dr. Radosevich. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Peter Kenseth with Petworking, and we'll sign off for today, but I look forward to checking back in on Darwin's cats in the future. And if the growth continues like it did between initial discussion of this episode and the sign-up rate that we've seen to date, hopefully we'll be looking at 30 or 50,000 cats signed up by then. But I think it's great work that you all are doing. It's important work. We're happy to feature it here on Petworking. So thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Kenseth with Petworking signing off.